Sonic, I know you're out here. It is I, Dr. Eggman. I know you're here. Come and give me a ring. Come on. There you are, you rodent. I'm going to squash you.
No. Mouse, run. Go fast. Get ring.
Come back. No, seriously, come back. Come back.
Why?
Hey everyone, it's Jules and Rich here for What Culture. We have just seen the Sonic movie, and as you can tell, it's quite a thing. But we're going to ask the question, is it any good? Meow? So yes, we have just seen the Sonic, the movie, the Hedgehog, the movie, and
Yes.
it is actually a very interesting film. Because it's not actually the skip fire that everyone was predicting it to be, thanks to the dodgy CGI, the unnecessary teeth, and the quite cringy sort of action scenes that we've been seeing leading up to this.
And the fact it's a video game movie.
Yes.
Which track record has not been good.
I stand here bemused by what I've seen because I really wanted to rail on this game because there's nothing I like more than a good old complaining session, but still, I walked away from this film pleasantly surprised. Now what we're going to do for you guys is break down why that is, and we're going to give it our score, but we're splitting the review into two things. So we're going to talk about the non-spoilerific stuff first, and then after a few minutes we'll give you a big warning. We'll start delving into why that is the case. But let's talk about general impressions. What were the big, flashiest things that we got out of this movie?
Well, to be honest, first things first, it's really well made.
Yeah.
Like even down to the having to reshoot some bits and bobs to redo Sonic entirely, because obviously, unless you've been living under a skip that is not on fire, you'd have known that the first trailer wasn't that well received, the design wasn't good, so Paramount delayed the film, they went back and they redid it, they deliberately delayed to not cause crunch, thank you Paramount, and they've come out with a genuinely very good, very well-made film.
But this is the thing, it's not the perfect film by any stretch of the imagination. What I would say is that it is a generic action film, but just done pretty well. Like, if I had kids, this is the type of film, the type of blockbuster popcorn flick that I would definitely want them to see because it's unoffensive. If you're a fan of the series, there's something there for you. It's maybe not as nostalgia heavy as it probably led itself to believe in the run up to it, but I still think that there was so much joy to be found. That people were having really fun, like Jim Carrey especially. He's having the time of his life.
I think you're right. There's nothing super like flashy about the plot, about even just the film overall. It's a very by the numbers, like the plot is very kind of predictable. It's something we've seen before. Just this like hero trounces villain story. There's nothing majorly like groundbreaking for it, but that's fine out of this film because we're not expecting to go into this and like over-analyze this film. We're going in hoping for a good time, and that is exactly what we got.
It's quite strange, isn't it? Because you've got like, if you break down this entire film's core messages, it's just Sonic looking for a mate.
It is,
yeah.
He just wants some friends.
That is his massive sort of like overarching character development of the entire thing. It's just kind of like, I just fancy a bloke who I can go get some brews with.
Yeah.
Like it's, there's nothing offensive about this film, which I think that a lot of people were expecting it to be. Everyone was expecting it to be just full of really bad memes or just terrible like jokes and this. And don't get me wrong, there are some moments
where it's like
that.
Okay, but I think we got a lot more laughs out of it than I think we were expecting.
If you were to compare this to a video game itself, out of the entire Sonic franchise, this one is kind of like Sonic Unleashed. You know the one where he's the werehog? Because there are moments of it where it's just kind of like, ooh, this is cringy. This is like pretty like on-the-nose kid family-friendly film.
Yeah.
But there are other moments where the speed is really felt. Like the way that it delivers the plot, for example, like you don't need to be a Sonic fan to know much about this film.
I think that's a good thing to draw from it. You don't need to be a fan.
It spells out everything for you straight away. I mean, admittedly, it was a bit fast for me. Like I sat there and I was like, oh God, slow down, let me digest a little bit of this first. It was like, here I am doing this, doing that, and now I'm here and I'm that. I'm like, whoa, okay, just
it's Sonic, he goes fast.
I get it, but it was a bit like just, I mean, if I was a kid, I might just be like, oh, okay, fair enough. But yeah, in terms of the actual like characters, really enjoyable.
Yeah.
The humans in the Sonic film, I would have to say they did a good job by not focusing too much on them.
Yeah, they tried not to make it too big and overblown. There are obviously a lot of different people that come about in this film, but they only really focus on Sonic himself, Tom, played by James Marsden, and Robotnik. They're really the only three people that have any kind of significant role, as much as the trailers might sort of tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
But it's really only about that trio, and then a couple of side characters.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of ensemble as well, but they're only really present here and there, but the main focus was very well done. It was very like laser focus on that, but again, what we actually got wasn't anything incredible. But it wasn't anything inoffensive. It wasn't something I would turn around and say was bad. It was a good film.
But if you're looking at the sort of production of it as well, like the animation is actually really well done.
It's really good.
Like I don't believe in all the cases that James Marsden was interacting with it. Like there's a scene where he has to like physically hold what is a representation of Sonic, and it's clearly not.
It's blatantly not.
And it's like the proportions of it are so out of whack. It looks like he's carrying one of those like the pool tubes, you know, the little noodles.
Yeah.
That you like. That's what he looks like he's carrying. It's like he's got a head, dude. Like cradle it a little bit, man.
Yeah.
Show him some respect. But overall, an enjoyable flick. Some problems, very corny, very cheesy.
Yeah.
But kind of like the veneer of it is just very polished and
the
done.
problems are more like sort of niggly little things that we've picked up on, but I don't think it's something that necessarily detracts from the film. I don't see it as a glaring flaw, and I think that's why we liked it and why it seems to be that a lot of people liked it, because it is a big family fun. You know, if you're a fan of Sonic, it's going to be great because you've got the references. As a video game film, it's great. If you're not into Sonic, you can still go and see it and completely appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, for that reason, I'd say that it's probably it's a solid 6 or 7 out of 10 film.
Absolutely.
Like, it doesn't do anything majorly wrong. It just doesn't push any formula in any particular direction.
Not necessarily a film that I would say is forgettable, but it's not something that will stick with you.
No.
Sort of think about how most people responded to Detective Pikachu. Very, very well made film. Very, very good film. Nothing inoffensive about it. It's good. That's kind of Sonic and Detective Pikachu, I think, because that's really the only comparison you can make.
Well, of recent times,
Of recent times, especially for video game films that actually are good. It's about neck and neck with Detective Pikachu, in my opinion.
I think that if you were going to go for the criticisms of the film, maybe they played it too safe. Maybe they didn't want to push too far because of the fact they were worried about the backlash that they'd already received.
Yeah.
I feel like the interactions between the characters and Sonic, sometimes a bit stilted. You didn't really believe that it was there. There was a lot of, I don't know what the camera trick is called, but it's when you show a person's reaction shot rather than them actually interacting. Like if I'm talking to you in the same shot where you can see there's a dialogue, you can see I'm looking at your face and blah, blah, blah. But in that, it's always just like, here's the camera angle of my face and we'll cut to your reaction there.
Yeah.
So that they never felt like they were really sharing the same space. And
yeah,
also,
they'd only be in the same shot if they were actually interacting.
Yeah, and that was
physically.
actually quite low, but maybe that's to the film's benefit because then it didn't highlight any of the shortcomings of doing that.
Yeah, it plays it safe, but I think sequel-wise, we're going to get one.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not going to bomb.
Again, no spoilers yet, but it's kind of obvious that yes, we're going to get a sequel down the line. I think the money this film will make will most likely warrant a sequel. Even just the general reception has been probably a lot higher than. Paramount probably went in thinking, yeah, we've got a good film, but again, the stigma of video game films, this has had a good reception, so a sequel is definitely on the way. And if they do have a sequel, then they do need to push the boat out a little bit. If they did the same thing again in terms of how safe they played it, the sequel would fall a bit. But for the blue blurs first, go on the big screen.
Not bad.
Not bad at all.
But what we're going to do now is, this is the end of the spoiler-free one. I know it's been a little bit wishy-washy, but that's because we can't really dive into the details, but we can in about 5 seconds. So this is your spoiler warning. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, right, we're now in the spoiler territory.
Well,
right.
You're still here if you've seen it.
Hopefully they're still here. Now I'll explain why. The film relies so much on a message of, connecting with humanity and stuff like that. And I feel that's why Robotnik's character works really, really well.
Yes.
Because of the fact that he is like, oh, I'm so angry, I hate humanity, I'm a genius and alone, and I've alienated myself from everyone. And you've got Sonic, who is literally referred to as an alien, so it's basically two alien forces opposing each other. And then in the middle is poor old hunk, James Marsden, just going, I don't know what's going on. Like the amount of times that he's just literally cuts to the camera of him going, what the,
yeah.
What? It's like, yeah, we get it, dude. Like, you are literally just the straight man to just be like, this is crazy, y'all. Like, this is mad. Yeah, it was a really enjoyable flick. But now I can express a few criticisms that I
we can be a bit more clear with what we didn't like.
Robotnik is a great character.
Yes.
Very entertaining, and Jim Carrey absolutely crushed it with what he was doing. There was lots of silly moments.
It's very reminiscent of sort of 90s Carrey that we sort of lost out on a bit as the 2000s went along. So it's great to see him back. And I mean, the reason why he was keen to do the film was because he could do all this mental stuff.
And
he does it brilliantly.
Him getting in the face of everyone he's speaking to, constantly doing these little facial tics and stuff.
It's quite scary actually. The way that they wrote him, the way his dialogue plays out, the way he's characterized, is actually kind of scary to see that sort of whimsicality from Carey. He's all this big, silly, big face, big, stupid stuff. but he's also not somebody you'd want in front of you doing that, because you can't laugh at him, because you'd almost be scared of him in that position.
He is actually quite terrifying in a few places, but in terms of the narrative, he is a shoddy villain.
Yes.
Like, I'm not gonna lie, like, I was a little bit disappointed that this film basically pushed the boat to say, like, right, he's gonna be the main focus, the main villain, he's got all of the access to this technology.
Yeah.
What did we actually see? We saw him have a car that split into another car, which split into a moped style thing, and we saw the egg drones that took 5 seconds to reload, and enough to, there's a scene in the kitchen, right, where Sonic's being shot at, and James Marsden, by the way, they're being shot at with this egg that's got like proper like minigun style stuff all the way around it. It then just goes reloading. It reloaded.
It just sits there, the age is winding up, and it's like
about 10 seconds reloading. The most inefficient combat troop that he's probably ever done. And I love Jim Carrey to pieces in terms of his acting style, because he is so chaotic, but he is here 24/7. He is at energy level 100. And the problem is, you don't get any sort of development for how much he truly detests Sonic, because he is already here. It means that when Sonic comes into the frame, he's just like, I hate you with all of my being. How do you develop that? It never felt like Sonic getting the one up on him was really bothering him that much, because he was already annoyed 24/7.
I mean, jump straight to the end of the film, and it's like, we have this now insane version of Robotnik, and it's like, this is the kind of thing I think we were hoping to build up, whereas instead it just sort of happens based on the end of the film, how the boss is literally the boss is defeated. But even right at the beginning of his introduction, which you've probably seen in the trailers, him strutting out of his lorry and having a go at that army dude, like, that could have been done in such a way to make him feel like a threat, because he didn't feel like a threat.
It felt like we'd missed a scene.
Yeah, I think if this, because this is a very formulated by the numbers film, the one thing that we didn't get was, say, Robotnik capturing Sonic, and then Tom, James Marsden's character, to come and rescue him. Like, that's probably the paint by numbers beat that was missing from that. So we just had this Robotnik character that just hated Sonic because he was some weird threat. Yeah, it was never really established as to why it was a challenge to his being, or like. Yeah, whereas if we'd have seen Robotnik at the beginning, like, establish himself as a really quite a scary character. If you, for example, vaporized this general to be like, no, I'm in charge, you need to go away, and the general would say, no, I'm in charge. And it became this battle, and he just vaporized him. That would instantly go, okay, don't get on the wrong side of this guy. And then his insanity towards Sonic beating him over and over again. It's not the fact that he got beaten over and over again that's the criticism, because it's kind of obvious that would happen, but it's more the fact that we didn't get to see him develop. As you said, he's 100%, and then he's 120% after the end of the film. To me, it was like a case of, if you want to make a good villain, you show, you don't tell. It's the classic rule of cinema. Yeah. And having a group of people sit around discussing how much of a badass Dr. Robotnik is nowhere going to be enough as basically showing the audience that he's a badass. Like, instead of just saying, like, he's a loose cannon, he doesn't work well with anyone, he's our only choice. No, he's not, by the way. You offered 3 other choices 5 seconds before that, but that's not what I'm talking about. He then shows up on the scene and he's like, I'm the best. It's kind of like, you haven't shown any reason for us to do that. Like, he's just arrogant, and he's very, and again, his dialogue plays up to that, but there's nothing else about him that really does. It's just arrogant dialogue, Carey whimsicality. That's Robotnik, and that's not necessarily outright a bad thing, but we think they could have gone about developing the character better. And it's Eggman, we all know who he is and what he does, well, at least if you're a Sonic fan, but it doesn't mean that they can just get away with not really doing much with him. No, but that's maybe something we'll see in the sequel. Well, I feel basically what it felt like was that there was just a few missing scenes either side that would have actually fleshed out, and I'm sure at some point there were more scenes that were shot that were cut, because there were some really apparent, not plot holes as such, but really just weird time skips. Gaps, like going from from one place to a bar was suddenly nighttime, and I can get that they were driving at the same time, but there's a huge section of time that we've missed out on there. Yep. Then it was another bit where Sonic was driving a car, and the front of the car was already smashed up, and he then drives into implied that, okay, he'd driven it up here, and it's why was he driving? Oh, he was. It's like, well, but maybe they actually have a line. I'm sure there was a scene there that would have established why Sonic was driving instead of Tom. Was it because he was on the run from the CIA? Maybe, but also, why would you give the Hedgehog the keys? It would have been, a way to tie it in easily would have just been, it's part of his bucket list, because Sonic all the way through this has a bucket list of things he wants to tick off before he leaves Earth. Even though literally everything bar 3 of them he does in the bar, so it's very strange how they just skip a lot of that, but I swear that there must have been more scenes filmed that were to help him tick off this bucket list. Yeah. But because of that, it felt like we had a story that was actually quite piecemeal about
him trying to figure out a way to get his rings back so that he can use them as a portal to jump to the next world and escape Dr. Robotnik. That's the main plot. But it felt like there was so much padding going on and yet nothing really connecting it that I was just kind of like, I didn't believe it at the end when Sonic turned around and said, look, I'm sorry I've mistreated you. I sat there in the theatre just going like...
And he had to explain himself as to why he said that line. It's like, oh yeah, of course, because he jumped on the whole, why are you leaving Green Hills and all that sort of thing.
By the way, just as a side note, as a director, don't have a heart-to-heart while you're on a freeway having a massive chase in an action scene. I know that the subversion of expectations probably looked great on paper, that they were having that moment, but delivering that across explosions, you're not paying attention to it at all. So when it came around, you're like, oh yeah, they did have a mild disagreement there.
But we'd already kind of forgotten about it.
And they never did the thing. If you're going to have the classic trope of, oh, you've done something that's going to annoy me and we're going to have to become friends again, have them split up. They didn't split up for a single second.
As I said, Dr. Robotnik kidnaps Sonic and
that would have been
Tom always doesn't care and then realises, no, I do care, and goes back and saves him or something like.
As much of a trope as it is, it's a trope because it actually works as a narrative device.
Again, this is a paint-by-numbers film, and that's not a bad thing, but they could have painted by numbers even harder to play up on that.
We'll switch over to talk about nostalgia, because this film has a lot of references for Sonic fans, and that's great. You would expect a film based on Sonic to have that. However, while occasionally you would hear the rings make the classic like Sega noise they did from the Mega Drive, while you would have Robotnik adopt the massive curly mustache and bald head at the very, very end of the film, there really wasn't enough to justify leaning on that. It felt like they were afraid to lean on it too much.
Because I think they were trying to do a bit more of a grounded style film. Not like it was trying to be gritty, but they weren't going to go all like balls to the wall, really big and silly, even though they kind of did at the end, and that was what we got the most laughs out of things.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And it feels like the moments where they could have really played up on stuff, the more subtle references did work. For example, the one thing I was not expecting to see.
The Sonic.
Yeah. The really bad MS Paint drawing, they got that in the beginning of the film and it completely killed us. Like, they could have really played up on things a lot more. Even at the end, one of the things I really, really wished happened in the literal boss fight of Sonic just bouncing off Robotnik's egg flyer thing was literally just having the same like noise from the games. Just things like that, like play up onto that. You've got this big borderline silly film. We will happily live with the idea of a hedgehog coming from Morbius to live on Earth. Make it a bit. They could have tied it in a little bit more silly. Like, the bits that they did have as references, make those references a bit more sort of vibrant, a bit more explicit. Don't add any more in, because I think they managed to make the balance really good, but I think they watered down what could have been a bit more on the nose, like big pop from Sonic fans references, whereas more it's like, oh yeah, there's that.
Well, we had moments where, for some reason, well, we know the reason why, because of the terrible reaction to Sonic's original design for this film, they went back to the drawing board to make him in line with what people actually expected and wanted from it. The same attention wasn't paid to Robotnik's robot designs. Like, there are so many egg inventions that are so creative and well known, yet none of them made an appearance in this. Like, I liked the design of his Star Destroyer style, jet fighter thing with all of the rocket pods at the end. I thought that looked cool, but at the same time, wouldn't it have been a much cooler thing if out of the bottom of it,
he dropped the wrecking ball? Because even in the
out.
credits, they play up to that same egg flyer with the wrecking ball.
Yeah, they do.
And it's like, if they'd have turned around and said, like, because he fires a load of rockets first at Sonic, and then imagine if he just like raised up and this ball dropped out from underneath him. It would have been really stupid, but it would have been really good. But that's something that I think will play up into the sequel.
I hope so.
Because the version of Robotnik that we have during the film isn't really the one we know. Whereas by the end of the film, by the sort of end credits or just before the credits scene of him on the Mushroom Planet, going crazy, shaving his head and growing his mustache out,
which was brilliant,
with
by the way.
With a bucket of bolts on his shoulder. Like, that's probably the point where we're going to see more of what we know. I think they did a good job of establishing the characters and starting off Robotnik kind of more grounded, and maybe they can go really silly when things go forward. I think they established Robotnik as a human on Earth really well, but now that they've moved on and he's literally stranded on another planet, this is where he starts to go the kind of crazy wrecking ball sort of thing in the supposed sequel that I'm assuming will happen.
Well, you say it's a supposed sequel. The end credits show Tails jumping up. We can talk about it because it is part of the spoilers
which
thing.
I absolutely expected to see was him jumping out of a ring at the end of the film, and there he was. So
it was absolutely brilliant. Like,
it was great.
I popped. I was like, brilliant.
And Tails looks really good as well.
Yeah, he does.
He looks in. It's basically the exact same design philosophy as the new Sonic. It's Tails like that, and
he doesn't have an annoying voice. I was so worried that they were going to go for like.
I think he's got the same voice or the very similar voice to what he's always had. Because the guy, I'm pretty certain, is it Ben Schwartz who voices Sonic in this? I think it is. Like, I think he voices Sonic anyway.
Right.
So it's like they've taken the guy who's done it already and moved him into the film version. I think it's probably the same with Sonic, but it sounds we only got a couple of lines from him, but still.
Well, it's just because of the fact I was worried, because if you played like Sonic Adventure, like it's a child playing the voice, and I was so worried that they were going to be like, "Oh, hey, Sonic!" I'll just be like, "Get out!"
It'll be
get
they'll
out.
have got a proper voice actor in for it.
I swear to God, if they bring in Big the Cat in, I'm not watching that.
But we've even had the echidnas, like right at the beginning when we saw the flashback on Morbius, there were echidnas, not necessarily Knuckles, but they were definitely echidnas chasing after Sonic and Mother Owl, whoever that was.
I'm just saying, by the way, don't be surprised if you see us and a billion other sites after this saying, "Is this Knuckles?" It's not.
It's not Knuckles.
It's not Knuckles. I can just say that.
I mean,
for the record
they could play it again in the sequel and might be like, "Hey, Knuckles was in fact there, like, but you didn't know it was Knuckles or something." I don't know.
I hate it when they do that, by the way. He was wearing a mask at the time. What, just because you were afraid to show it, though? Anyway, not the point. The thing is about this entire film is that while it's graphically impressive, it plays a very safe beat and, it's unoffensive, the question as to whether it's a good movie actually comes down to, was it always projected to be such a bad movie that anything above, even it being average, means that we view it as being good? It's basically if you tell somebody again and again and again through negative reinforcement that this is going to be rubbish, that's going to be absolutely terrible, it comes out and it's just average. You go, well, that was much better than I expected. So therefore,
is that what we're feeling?
But is that a good movie? Does that make it a good movie? Because it doesn't do anything new. It doesn't do anything special. I was saying to you before, it's kind of like if Marvel pulled this trick.
It probably a very by numbers story.
Yeah, like the way that the MCU has evolved. You've got you had your generic origin story ones, then we evolved into more sort of complex storytelling. We ended with like Endgame, Infinity War, which are totally different beasts to where we started.
Yes.
If they then come out and put out a film afterwards that is another origin story that feels like it was Thor or Iron Man, people will probably just be like, this is actually a bit boring now because you've evolved the formula. And now I'm looking at this and all I see is other action films of origins, superhero stories and things like that, and just thinking, it's not doing anything bad, it's just not doing anything new. So does that mean
again, I think, you are right. Like the idea of going into it thinking it's going to be bad. I personally didn't think it was going to be bad, even after the reviews were saying it was actually not terrible. Like I was going in thinking I'm hoping I'm enjoying this.
Yeah.
And you are right. Like there is that boost of like positivity about it because it's not a raging tire fire. But playing by numbers, I think the way that they went about it, because it's the first film, I think was a good move. I think it seems to be that a lot of people are looking at it thinking if the sequel then doesn't actually push the boat out, that would be the problem. So it's like playing it safe now, I think was a good idea. Of course, it's not perfect. There are things we would change, and as we've said, play up onto the nostalgia more, make it a bit more on the nose with those nostalgia nods, change out Robotnik's characterization, maybe fiddle with the plot a little bit because it did feel very like boom, here's a very linear thing.
And also, please, for the love of God, don't make him do the flossing dance move twice. That was a no-go for me. If they put that in the trailer, this entire thing would have been scuppered.
Yeah, because the scene that he flosses in is one that's in the trailer, but they replaced it with something else.
Yeah.
If they'd have put the flossing in the trailer,
in fact, actually, this brings us on to probably the final point of the film, which is this film has tons and tons of pretty cheesy dialogue. And if you look back at any of the Sonic stuff, cheesy dialogue is actually like at the forefront of his writing style.
Yeah.
Like that's actually to be expected. But there are so many references to other pop culture effects that it actually dates this movie incredibly. He stands there going, oh, it's like I'm Vin Diesel for family. There's another bit where they talk about bloody Olive Garden and like, how much did they pay you for that, brother?
I think it's more it plays up onto the idea that Sonic's been on Earth in hiding, but still picking up like culture and stuff over the course of being there. It's like we get it, but you are right. It does date the film.
Like it's a product immediately of this time, as in the day it was released. But it dates it horrendously because if you look at it in a couple of years, you'll look back at him doing those two flossing dances, and it won't just be like with a sense of, remember when we used to do that? It will be a case of, God, that was a bad time.
But I think the Sonic movie, plays it very safe, which I think for the first film is fine. For the last film of something, Rise of Skywalker, playing by numbers, maybe not the best idea, though
Yeah.
we're not talking about Rise of Skywalker
Yeah.
here. But yeah, plays it very safe. But I don't think that's a bad thing for a type of film in the video game space. Basically,
Yeah.
it's played it very, very well. So we can now add that to the podium of good video game films that are actually good,
or at least better than average.
well, better than average.
And the thing is,
it's not like the best. It's not the best video game film ever made.
Oh, no, no,
I don't
but-
think there's anything you could give that title.
But there are elements of that film that I want to see more of. Like going back to Mobius, like that,
absolutely.
it looked amazing. Like it just was like, and there were moments where I genuinely laughed out loud. I thought it was really
there
funny
were
in
some
some
big
places.
laughs in there, and again, the spectacle of it, they really nailed. It's very, very, very well done. The music as well was brilliant. I had a couple of big pops from the music, playing the hyper potions,
Nice
music
little piano
from
at the
Sonic
end.
Mania to open the film on Morbius, and then playing a really nice piano rendition of Green Hill
Yeah,
Zone at the
that
end.
was-
And
it's
it's like
just
it's just nice to be a fan of this and to see it on the big screen and not be a complete cock up.
Yeah,
I think is why we like it. And so yeah, I think you are right. We are appreciating it because it's not terrible, but even then, if you're not a big Sonic fan, you're just wanting something to kick back and watch and not have to overanalyze like we have.
Yeah, I know.
This will be a great film to watch. So seriously, it's worth seeing if you're a
Oh, yeah.
Sonic fan, if you're not a Sonic fan, if you like video games, go and see it because like Detective Pikachu, which again I'll put it with, it's done the source material justice.
Yeah,
So
I couldn't have summed it up better.
I'm really excited for what is to come next. I want to see more of completely Bat-esque crazy areas. Bored
Yeah,
Robotnik.
definitely.
I just want to see him turn up with like a fat suit.
Oh, it's gonna be
And in his
great.
proper Eggmobile with the wrecking ball, and he's got his little drones with him. And
Just to give you some context, he ends up in a mushroom world at the very end of the film.
Did see it in the trailer.
And I just think it's going to be quite funny in the fact that he could potentially blame his massive weight gain on just like, well, mushrooms are quite fattening.
all I eat is mushrooms.
Yeah, all I eat is mushrooms. But anyway, that is our review, both spoiler and not, for the Sonic the Hedgehog film. Let us know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. Are you excited about this? Are you going to see it? If not, why, my friends? Because it's not as bad as you might think
definitely
it
worth
is.
a punt.
But until then, and for all other things ring-based, bold, and Sonic hat, it's on the floor there,
It's over
looking,
there. Sorry.
looking bad. Stay tuned to whatculture.com. As always, I've been Jules. This has been Rich. You have been awesome. And we'll speak to you soon.
Bye.